On today's show, we interview the branding expert for startups, Emily Heyward. And on today's show, Emily Heyward shares with us how she successfully started the Red Antler agency, about branding 101, and why branding is more than just a name and a logo. She also talks about effective networking, all this and more on today's edition of the Thrive Time Show.
Get ready to enter the Thrive Time Show.
We started from the bottom, now we hit. We started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. We started from the bottom, now we hit. We started from the bottom, now we hit.
We started from the bottom, now we're on the top. Teaching you the systems to get what we got. Colin Dixon's on the hooks, I break down the books. Z's bringing some wisdom and the good looks. As the father of five, that's why I'm alive. So if you see my wife and kids, please tell them hi. It's the C&Z up on your radio. And now 3, 2, 1, here we go.
We started from the bottom, now we hit. We started from the bottom, and we'll
Yes, 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 and yes, Thrive Nation. Get ready for a very exciting conversation with today's guest. Andrew, now you know this and I know this. A lot of times we have guests on the show who have some great stuff to teach us, but sometimes you have a feeling that the show's going to go to another level.
It's gonna go there.
And I feel like that's going to happen on today's show as we interview Emily Heyward. Welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you?
I am great. I am so excited to be here.
I feel like the people out there maybe have done a little bit less research on you than I have done. Can you explain to the listeners out there, what exactly do you do?
Absolutely. So I am one of the founders of a branding company called Red Antler, and we are the leading branding company that specializes in startups. So our focus is helping new businesses launch and grow. A lot of our clients come to us before they even exist, before they have a name. It's just a team of founders with an idea, and we partner with them to bring that idea to life through a brand, through a consumer experience, through a website, and ensure that everything they're imagining is coming into the world in the best way possible.
You know, when you hear the word branding, it sends some people way over here, some people over there. Everyone's got their own version of branding. What does branding mean to you?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions about what branding means. And the most common one that I hear is that people think branding is just a logo, or just a name and a logo, or even, a name, a logo, and maybe like a font and 3 colors. But for us, branding is actually much deeper than that. It really starts with having a clear sense of what a business stands for. Like, what's the idea that they really want to own, and the feeling they want to give to people who interact with it. And then how do you make sure that idea comes to life through everything that a consumer sees, touches, and interacts with? So even your conversation with a customer service team, that's part of brand.
So where do you see people, when you sit down with somebody who has started down the branding path, where do you see them going wrong most often?
I think that the most common mistake is thinking that branding is something that you can do once, check the box, and then move on to the important part of running your business, versus recognizing that brand really needs to be the lens through which you make all of your choices, including features and functionality, including how your product actually behaves and what it offers people.
Now, you actually started this business in, 2007, am I correct?
I did. You definitely did your research.
Okay, so tell us then, how did you grow up before you became the Emily Heyward? Before you became the guru of branding. Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? Tell us about your childhood.
Okay, great. I was born in New York City. And then when I was very young, we moved to the suburbs of New York City, a town called Hastings-on-Hudson, which I didn't appreciate enough at the time. It's an amazing town and full of creative and interesting people. And I was just frustrated to be in the suburbs and not in the city where the action's happening. So I ended up going to high school, like busing into high school in the city. So I had a sort of hybrid existence where I had my suburban life with my family, and then most of my friends lived in Manhattan, and that's where I spent a lot of my time on the weekends.
Did you have a favorite old school jam in high school? Did you have an old school jam that you loved, like a specific group that you liked, a specific band you liked, an R&B group, a rapper? Did you have a specific old school jam that really spoke to you?
Well, I mean, it was the 90s in New York City, so it was really, I would say the golden age of hip hop. And certainly, everyone in my high school was obsessed with Biggie.
And if you don't know, now you know.
But I also was very, very into the jam band thing. Very into Fish, very into the Grateful Dead. This is probably painting a picture of the kind of person I was in high school. Loved Dave Matthews Band.
Oh, really?
Definitely did a lot of, concert going and all of that fun stuff.
So let's talk about this for a second. You went from high schooler, middle schooler into becoming a branding expert. When did you first figure out what you wanted to do professionally?
So I was always really fascinated by pop culture, and, not just as someone who loved film and loved TV, although I absolutely loved those things, but really going deeper into asking questions about, like, why do we love the things we love? What causes a trend? How do we define an entire generation like Gen X and talk about, what they care about and what they like to wear and what they're eating and listening to, and how do these sort of cultural things unite us, even across geographies and across, different backgrounds. So that was always something that just really fascinated me. And I knew that I wanted to make a career that was somehow engaged in digging into what makes people tick from a sort of pop psychology perspective. And initially I thought maybe that I would go into magazines, which, looking back, I'm now glad I didn't. But I ended up sort of exploring different paths and landed an internship at an advertising agency. And prior to that, advertising was not really on my radar as something that I necessarily wanted to do, but I got this job opportunity and I took it. And once there, I realized that it was really scratching the itch for me. It was exactly the kind of thing that I was interested in. Like, how do, many, many, many different people end up buying the same brand of detergent? And what motivates them to do that? And how do you kind of tap into these deep-seated needs in a way that's motivating and resonant?
How did you land your internship? Did you know somebody from school? Was it a friend of yours? What was your entrance into the internship?
So I really just wanted to spend the summer in San Francisco. That was my goal. And I was going to drive across the country and spend the summer out there. And through a family friend, ended up getting connected to an agency out there. It was just, I was doing a very broad job search to figure out, who do I know that knows somebody in San Francisco so I can be employed when I'm living there for 2 months.
So when did you feel like you were first finally beginning to gain traction? So many people get an internship or they work in an industry and they go, I don't like it. And they move on to something else. And they say, I don't like that either. And they kind of jump, every year or two into a new thing. When did you feel like you were first beginning to gain traction?
Yeah, for me with advertising, it was love at first sight. I absolutely loved the environment. I loved the people that I met, and I loved the challenge of thinking about consumers and how to, speak to them in a way that would really have an impact. So following that summer, I was back in New York the summer after that, which was my summer leading into senior year. And that's when I became much more purposeful about reaching out, networking, trying to find a job in advertising for the summer that could lead to a job when I graduated. And I ended up being introduced to a woman who my mom had actually met at a cocktail party. So it was just total luck.
Yep.
And my mom was like, I met this woman. She works in advertising. You should talk to her. And I met with her and I was explaining why I wanted to go into advertising. And I thought that I wanted to be a copywriter, which is, the person that writes the ads.
Yeah.
And she was like, based on everything you're saying, I don't think you want to be a copywriter. I think you actually want to be what was called a strategic planner. And this was a job I'd never heard of before, which I think is so interesting because there are so many jobs that you're just not taught about in school, especially if you're not on a professional track in school, right? You only know the basic jobs. And she described it to me, and the job, which ended up becoming my first job, was exactly everything I've been talking about. It's about drilling down into what motivates people, what they care about, what they need, and then figuring out how to translate that into a brand idea. And my first job out of school ended up being at this very large agency in New York City working in the strategic planning department. Now, granted, I was an assistant. My job was to like put together people's decks and do research. And I was running our intranet site, which was very rudimentary. The year was 2001. But I was exposed to amazing thinking, amazing opportunities. And from there, really ended up building a career. And I did that for 7 years or 6 years, really, before starting Red Antler. And that time was just an incredible time for me.
How did you go about starting your own business?
Yeah. So after those first few years in advertising, I was learning a ton. I was making incredible friendships that have lasted, to this day. I reached a point of frustration where I felt like my learning curve had plateaued, and I felt like I was being asked to solve the wrong problems. I think we'd start out with these amazing intentions where we were going deep into people's psyche and what that was missing from their lives. But then the only thing that we could actually affect was the ad campaign. So, we'd be trying to sell a product that had been around sometimes, for literally a century. Like I was working on some of the world's oldest brands, and we'd have no ability to actually affect the product itself. And that, to me, started to feel like I was hitting a wall. Like I was being asked to solve the wrong thing. It was like a communication solution, but wasn't actually getting to the root of what would make people care about this brand. So I ended up reuniting with a close friend who I'd met at my first job. His name's JB. He's now my co-founder at Red Antler. And he was running the New York office for a New Zealand agency that wanted to expand to the States. And he was here on his own doing that. And at least to me, that felt like a new challenge. I was like, okay, it's just going to be me and JB. We can kind of set our own terms, make our own rules, and I'll start learning more again.
Were you officing out of a house or an apartment, or where were you officing?
So the New Zealand agency set him up with an office.
Cool.
And they were, bankrolling this expansion into the States. So this was pre-Red Antler. And it was actually an amazing crash course in being an entrepreneur because we had a safety net, right? We had our bosses in New Zealand. We were getting paid salaries, but it was just the two of us. And we were here in New York, and we had to figure out, like, we don't know how to start an ad agency. We had no connections. We were super young. But we just started getting introduced to people. And the timing was incredible because it was actually right when the New York startup scene was getting going. So people started to introduce us to entrepreneurs because it was just two of us, and they'd say, oh, I've got a friend that's starting a business. Like maybe they need advertising. And we'd meet with these teams, and they didn't need advertising. They were so far before needing advertising, but they did need the kind of strategic thinking that we knew how to do. And through those conversations, we realized there was an opportunity to start really the first brand company that would be focused on early stage companies. Before Red Antler, there was not a company that was, really dedicated to helping entrepreneurs and founders think about their brand starting even before launch. So we saw this opportunity, parted ways with the bosses in New Zealand, and Red Antler was formed.
Now, Emily, how did you get people to recommend you? So many people ask me. They ask a lot of our listeners will reach out to me and say, how do you get introduced? I mean, what advice would you have for somebody out there that's, trying to start something and they're not finding themselves having the favor that you had? And obviously you had to work hard to gain that favor. But what advice would you have for somebody who's not getting those referrals, not getting those recommendations?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely about cultivating a great network of relationships, even if it's not immediately clear where that's going to head. I think that when people can feel your networking, that can become very uncomfortable. And I think if people feel like you're only reaching out to them because you want a favor, they might be more reluctant to do that favor. I think that, both JB and I have through the years really put a lot of energy and effort into friendships, into, supporting colleagues who we've met along the way. And that's ended up paying off because the goal was not for it to pay off.
So you had sincerely invested in the lives of these people you were meeting. And I believe that you're doing it. And I'm just going to have to assume that some of our listeners don't know the moves to network without seeming like you're networking. What were some of the things you did? Did you do like handwritten thank you notes? Did you take people out for a fresh tableside guacamole? What were your moves?
I think that so in those early days when we were meeting people, when we were working for the New Zealand company, we offered a lot of free advice, a lot of like flexibility in terms of what we were bringing to the table. We never just went in with an ask. We were always thinking about how can we add value for this person? How can we like bring them something that they wouldn't otherwise have? And a lot of those early relationships that we formed either ended up being clients when we started Red Antler or people who introduced us to clients. Because in the beginning, when we met them, it wasn't about what they could give to us. It was about what we could give to them.
And what kind of things would you give them when you're a startup and you don't have very much money?
Thinking, expertise. I think that, we had a perspective that a lot of these startup founders didn't have. We had spent the early years of our career being trained by the world's biggest, most successful global brands. And we knew what it meant to run a focus group, to, get feedback from consumers, to define a target audience. Like all these things where it might seem easy, but there's actually an incredible amount of skill and expertise involved. And we were able to do that stuff, and we were willing to do it for cheap, sometimes for free. Our first few clients at Red Antler, we joke that like we paid them to be our clients, and it's not really fully a joke because the amount of effort we put in so far surpassed the fees that we were making, but we knew that it would pay back in the end. And our entire business to this day is only driven by referrals.
Now,
there's literally no other way that we get new business.
So let me ask you this then. What are some of the brands that you've worked with that some of our listeners may know? I mean, you're not a name dropper. And Andrew, you know this. Our guest here, Emily, she's not a name dropper.
Nope.
But we are name droppers.
This is true.
We shamelessly name drop on behalf of our guests. So if you could name drop just a few companies you've worked with that some of our listeners might know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of our most popular brands that we ever helped launch is the footwear company Allbirds.
Allbirds. How do you spell that?
Allbirds.
Okay, I'm going to give you 1 mega point because I feel like our listeners know that one. Okay, what's another brand that we might know?
So we helped launch the mattress company Casper.
Okay, really? That's you. That's you. That is 2 mega points, and that's a round of applause right there. Yes. And another mega point. Here it comes. So far, you're doing very well. You have 3 mega points at this point. They are not redeemable for tangible goods and services, but in the afterlife, rumor has it they're worth a lot. What maybe one more brand?
And now I'm nervous. I'm not going to get sound effects.
Oh no, let's see here. I'm ready.
How about the mobile retailer Boxed? Very popular right now because they sell toilet paper.
Oh yeah, okay. That's Andrew. That was impressive. That was
very impressive.
Very, very impressive. Okay, so now your business has gained traction. Things are going well. You've got referrals coming in from left to right. You're helping startups with their branding and much, much more. Then you decided to write this new book, Obsessed. Building a Brand People Love from Day One. Obsessed is the title. Building a Brand People Love from Day One. What got you obsessed about writing a book titled Obsessed?
So I think that through the years, it was 12 years into running Red Antler when I wrote this book. So this was not something that I decided to do, 2 years in, I've got lessons to share, right? It was really over a decade of partnering with incredible entrepreneurs. And I think seeing so much about what leads to success and what also doesn't lead to success, and reached a point where I realized, there's this incredible new wave of businesses, some of which I've been lucky enough to work on and others that I've just been observing as a brand builder and as a consumer, that are really forming a new kind of relationship with their people, with the people out there in the world. I think that consumers now are at a point where we have so much more choice than ever before. Right. We can literally buy things touching a button from like a device in the palm of our hands. And while that certainly leads to more competition, I think it's actually also led to much deeper relationships. When a consumer chooses to align with a brand, they really mean it. And these brands become part of their identity. And, even the title, you see people all the time posting on Instagram about like a new pair of jeans or a new candle brand or a new face wash and hashtagging it obsessed, which is like a pretty powerful word to use about a purchase that you made.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go into a rapid fire laser show. Now, this is where I'm going to try to paint you into the corner by asking you tough questions that are found within the pages of your book. Should you get it right, you earn a mega point. Should you get it wrong, you get this sound. And Andrew loves hitting that button, so don't give him the satisfaction needed. He wants to hit the button. So here we go. In your book, Obsessed, Building a Brand People Love from Day One, you talk about how Casper was able to upend the mattress industry by building a beloved brand where none had existed before. Tell us just enough of that story to make us want to buy the book.
Great. So I think that what's so interesting to me about Casper is that they entered a category that is not thought of as sexy or interesting. It's not like perfume or fashion where people already have these brands that they're obsessed with, right? When Casper launched, literally people couldn't even name their mattress brand. And they had this idea that they were going to sell a mattress online from a brand you've never heard of. You couldn't go try it in a store, and they only had one model. And people just went nuts for it. They completely changed the category dynamic. They were able to build brand love in a category where like nobody cared about their mattress brand. And what fascinated me is I'd have people approach me who would say, oh my God, I love Casper so much. I don't have one yet, but like when I get a mattress, I'm going to get a Casper. So here's a mattress brand that people felt an affinity for, and they had never even slept on the bed.
And so you've worked with Casper, and then you also in your book you talk about this dating app Hinge, how it won a fanatical user base and great word of mouth with the promise that the app was designed to be deleted. That right there, it confounds my brain. I'm gonna give you a mega point on the first answer. That was pretty good. The second one here, I don't understand. You're telling me that you worked with a dating app called Hinge that won a user base and great word of mouth by promising that the app was designed to be deleted. Do tell, my friend.
So I'm going to take a guess that you have not had the pleasure of dating through apps, because anybody who has, and I use the term pleasure with serious air quotes, knows that, it can be very, very frustrating. And there's a feeling that you're in this endless cycle of sort of swiping and reaching out to hundreds of people and getting rejected or ghosted, or you go on one date with someone and you never hear from them again. And it feels like almost like a game. Like it feels like it's more about sort of being on the app than it is about actually finding something meaningful. And you're just stuck in this endless, frustrating cycle. So what Hinge made the promise to its users is, hey, look, we don't want you to stay on Hinge forever. If Hinge works, you don't need Hinge anymore. And we're actually a place for people to find real relationships, so they no longer need to be on a dating app. So we have designed Hinge for you to get on Hinge, find someone, and then get off Hinge. And the way that, we expressed that with them was this line, designed to be deleted, which really stood behind their promise that this is not about sort of keeping you on this app in this gamified dating culture, but it's really about helping you find something real and meaningful.
How does Hinge work? How is it different than other dating apps? I've been married 20 years. I'm not on these apps. But tell me, how is Hinge different from other apps?
So when the app culture first launched, the first app was Tinder. And they, unlike the previous dating websites of the past, had this insight that all people care about are the profile pictures. So let's get rid of profiles. You're not going to fill out like, here's my favorite place to eat, and here's what I like to do on the weekends. And instead, we're just going to show photos. And all you have to do is swipe left or right based on how you feel about someone's photos. And this was revolutionary. People loved this. It felt quick. It felt like it was cutting to the chase of what was important to people. But it also, I think, inadvertently led to a lot of the bad behaviors that I was talking about before. So Hinge, when they first launched, also had sort of swiping as their main functionality, that thing where you just look at someone's picture and decide on the spot if you want to, have the conversation go further. But during our process working with them, they realized that they wanted to stand for something different. And they wanted to encourage better treatment of people and more humanity in this space. And they got rid of swiping. They brought in profiles, but in a beautiful, mobile-first, really easy-to-use way, and created a different way to form conversations. They made it really easy to start talking to people based on mutual interests, based on, something unique and quirky about yourself, and ensure that from the start, this wasn't such a sort of snap, shallow interaction.
Okay, I'm going to give you another mega point. It appears as though you know what you're talking about. This just in. Your friends in Oklahoma have verified that you do, in fact, know your stuff when it comes to branding. My final question I have for you about your book is there's the luggage startup company, Away, that's now valued at $1.4 billion, if I'm getting this right. Away. Tell me about Away and why you decided to include this story in your book.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the book is a selection of certainly clients I've worked on, but it's also just brands that are in the world that I admire, that I think there's something to learn from. And Away is in my chapter talking about the power of focus. And what they did was they launched with just one style of luggage. And if you compare that to a traditional luggage brand, like if you go on Tumi's website or Samsonite's website, like there are hundreds of different suitcases that all have these like slightly different features, and you have to wade through it and you don't know the difference between them. And it's just really frustrating and difficult to shop. And what Away did was just came out with like their one style, and they always knew that they were going to expand from there. But it enabled them to tell a much more emotionally resonant story that wasn't just about their product, but was really about people's love of travel. And it meant that they had this iconic look that you'd see it in the airport and you recognized it. But it also meant that they could spend their time telling a bigger story and connecting to people on a deeper level versus just trying to get people in based on a set of features that no one really cared about anyway.
So you are an expert of branding. You're the author of the new book, Obsessed, Building a Brand People Love from Day One. What's in the future for you in the next 12 months? What's your plan? What's your plan?
Well, I'm launching the book, so that comes out early June, and certainly was not expecting it to happen during the pandemic, but I'm hoping that I can still, have great conversations with people about it and share some of the lessons from it in, amazing formats such as this. And then, once I get through the summer, it's really focusing on Red Antler. I think that, we're constantly bringing new businesses into the world. I think a lot of the new clients that we're seeing right now are finding really interesting ways to innovate in light of what's going on in the world right now, and thinking about, how to create new kinds of value for people. We're obviously in a time of incredible uncertainty and a lot of economic uncertainty. And I think we're actually seeing quite a bit of innovation come out of that. That's going to be really exciting. So my focus will be ensuring that these new clients we're working with have incredibly successful launches over the next year.
Where do you live now? What state do you call home?
New York.
So what's it like being locked down for 3 consecutive months? What's the feel? What's the vibe? What's the mojo? Especially, the CDC now came out today, and I don't want to exaggerate a number, good or bad, but the CDC came out and said that the death rate from the Andrew, I'm fact checking right now. I'm pulling up the facts. I am not going to misquote. Here we go. This is from the CDC website. They're saying that the real estimate of the overall death rate of COVID-19 is now at 0.26%, and that was reported by CNN. What's it like every day as you see different headlines coming in, and what's it like on the ground living there in New York?
It's really intense, obviously, because we've really been, the epicenter of this from the beginning, I'd say, in the States, more or less. I am trying to stay positive for my team, who's been doing an unbelievable job working from home. And I think, bringing so much creativity and inspiration every single day. Like, it's really just been astounding to see how everybody's adapted and is finding new ways to work and new ways to collaborate. So that's been one positive that's come out of this. And then I'm also just, trying to balance childcare, work, the needs of my family. So I'm sure it's similar to what a lot of people are going through, and, very much looking forward to coming out the other end of this.
I'm just asking you, when do you think, now that we know whether you're a Democrat or a Libertarian or a Republican or a centrist or whatever we want to call ourselves, just looking at it as a branding person, you're good at kind of looking at spotting trends, and now that you're seeing CNN coming out and showing that there's a 0.26% death rate from those who come down with COVID-19 and get it reported and tested, that kind of thing. When do you think we're going to be opened up again in New York specifically?
I'm looking to the scientists to guide us here.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. I don't know if there's going to be a resurgence once we open up, but I think
That's
that
fair.
all of our efforts have to be on keeping our most vulnerable people safe and healthy.
Okay, my final question for you. No COVID questions here. Just final question. If somebody out there wants to sign up with you, wants to hire you, wants to pay you to help them with their branding, what do you charge per month? What do you charge per week? What do you charge per year? Give us just some range or basis of what you charge if someone wants to live large and book with the best and hire you to be their branding wizard.
So we don't have a set rate card like that.
Okay.
I think that we evaluate every opportunity, on its face, and we want to meet incredible entrepreneurs. And even if someone can't afford us right now, that doesn't mean that, we won't be a good fit in the future, or that we can't still offer value to them. So I don't want to throw out a number that would discourage people from reaching out. We love meeting new entrepreneurs, and, to your point earlier about building a network, you never know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you like living in Brooklyn, New York?
Absolutely love it, and never plan to live anywhere else.
So you love Brooklyn. What do you like most about Brooklyn?
I think that Brooklyn, I love Manhattan too. And I moved to Brooklyn from Manhattan now some years ago, probably, 11 years ago. Brooklyn to me is a good mix because there's still an amazing energy. There's so much diversity. There's incredible restaurants, or at least were, and tons to do. But it's a little bit quieter than Manhattan, and there's just a little bit more of a chill vibe. The streets aren't as crowded. You can see the sky. There's a little bit more green. So to me, it's really the best of both worlds. And I love that I can be into Manhattan in 20 minutes if I want to, but I have a little bit more of a peaceful existence for my day-to-day.
Okay, you've got the mic. We've got about 500,000 listeners every month on this great show, some months more. What's the final thing you want to share with the listeners? What's the one pontification, maybe the one action step, the one thing you want all of our listeners to do? What's the one thing?
I think that if you have an idea for a business and you feel like you are solving a real problem that is not currently being solved, now's the time. I don't think there's going to be a better time. I don't think that you can dip a toe in and sort of wait for it to make sense. I think you have to go for it, because if you don't, someone else is going to do it, and you're going to be filled with regret.
That right there is some profound words, because I hear so many people that want to be an entrepreneur. We call them wantrepreneurs. They want to. They're on the verge of doing so, and I think there's somebody out there that might have got the nudge they needed to start their new thing. And Emily, I just appreciate you taking time out of your schedule there. I know you probably have a busy day planned, getting ready for this book to be purchased by everybody all throughout the world. And I encourage you, folks, if you're out there today and you have the ability to do so, check out the new book, Obsessed, Building a Brand People Love from Day One. Again, it's called Obsessed, all caps, Obsessed, Building a Brand People Love from Day One. Emily, thank you for being on the show tonight.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!
Boom. Boom. Boom.
What if you could gain access to download each and every book that I've ever written for free? Well, that'd be terrible, because I don't like you. Okay, we're making a big assumption here. But assuming that you do like me and you like the Thrive Time Show, you can now go to thrivetimeshow.com/free-resources. That's thrivetimeshow.com/free-resources to download each and every book that I've ever written for free. You can download the ebook version of each and every book that I've ever written for free.
Clay, I just want to chime in here real quick. I don't like you or capitalism. I feel like we should all get free stuff.
Well, I am in the process of explaining where you can get free stuff. And you can now also download all the helpful infographics. There's infographics on Firing 101, the perfect hiring system, the principles from Ray Dalio, Internet Marketing 101, the Lead Bin Management System, Managing Humans 101, Logo Creation 101, Why Google Loves WordPress, Time Management 101. We also have an incredible infographic about the importance of calling your leads often, because the average person no longer answers their phone unless they are called multiple times. And unless they receive a text from you. We also have the importance of file nomenclature 101, sales lead conversion 101, and much, much more. And it's all available for you to download for free right now by going to thrivetimeshow.com.
Are you suggesting that I should have to move my body?
Yes.
This is for free. Isn't there a way you could just beam it? I mean, why do I have to move my body?
Because
typing causes me anxiety.
Whatever.
Which is why I would never go to thrivetimeshow.com.
Come on.
/free-resources. I would never go to thrivetimeshow.com /free-resources.
All right, let me clarify. If you have the capacity to move your fingers, go to thrivetimeshow.com /free-resources to download an ebook version of every single Amazon best-selling book I've ever written and all the infographics that have the power to change your life.